Last winter, right after I turned 17, I got a part-time job at a thrift store on the edge of town. It wasn't one of those big chain stores. This place was basically a converted house with old floorboards, warm yellow lights, and a smell like dust mixed with lemon cleaner. The owner, a quiet older woman named Marlene, ran it mostly by herself, and she only hired me because her nephew, who I barely knew, told her I needed extra money for school. I usually worked evenings, sorting through donated boxes and tagging clothes. Most nights were boring, just me and the radio humming in the background while customers drifted in and out. Nothing about that job ever felt dangerous or creepy, until the night that changed everything. It happened maybe 4 weeks after I started. The weather had been getting colder, and by 6 o'clock the sun was already long gone. The store closed at 8, and after that I was supposed to vacuum, shut off the lights, and lock the back door before leaving. Pretty simple. That night, though, the store felt different as soon as I walked in. The air felt heavier, like the place hadn't been aired out in days. I figured maybe the heater was broken again, so I brushed it off. Marlene left early, saying she wasn't feeling well, so I was alone for the whole shift. Around 7:45, a truck pulled up outside. Old, rusty, one of those boxy ones from the 90s. I saw its headlights through the window, but whoever was driving didn't get out. It just sat there humming. I tried not to stare, but something about it made my stomach tighten. People drop off donations pretty late sometimes, so I assumed that's what it was. I was tagging a coat when I heard the donation bin outside creak open, then slam shut. Nothing unusual, except I didn't hear anyone walking around afterward. No footsteps crunching on the gravel, no engine starting again. Just silence. I walked to the front door and locked it early, then peeked out through the window. The truck was still there, but now it was parked crooked, closer to the door. The driver's side window was down. Someone was definitely inside, but I couldn't see their face, just the pale outline of a head turned toward the store. I stepped away and tried to shake it off. Maybe they were waiting for someone. Maybe they were just lost. At 8 on the dot, I shut off the neon open sign and went to vacuum the rug near the fitting rooms. That's when I heard it. The soft rattling sound of hangers shifting, like someone brushed against a clothing rack. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. I turned off the vacuum and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the heater kicking on, or maybe I bumped into something without realizing. But when I turned to go back toward the counter, I froze. One of the fitting room curtains, one I was sure had been wide open all evening, was now drawn shut. Just slightly, not fully closed, like someone didn't want it to be obvious. My throat went dry. "Hello?" My voice sounded way too shaky. No reply. I inched closer, every part of me screaming that this was a bad idea. I reached out and pulled the curtain back quickly, empty. Just the little wooden bench and the mirror. I let out a shaky breath, scolding myself for freaking out. I turned off the store lights row by row, grabbed my bag, and went to lock the back door. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me, sharp and cold. The parking lot was half lit by the single flickering pole lamp. I reached for the lock, but before I could turn the key, gravel crunched behind me. Slow, steady steps. I spun around. The truck was still parked in front, but now the driver's side door was open. And someone, some tall, thin figure, was standing halfway between the truck and the store. Not moving, just staring at me. I couldn't make out his face, but I saw the pale outline of it, long and narrow, almost ghostly in the cold light. He didn't say anything, didn't wave, didn't ask for help. He just stood there, facing me like he'd been watching the entire time. My heart started pounding so fast it hurt. I backed toward my car and fumbled with my keys. The man didn't move at all. He didn't even tilt his head. He just watched, like he was waiting for something. Once I got inside my car, I locked the doors immediately. I looked up again. He was closer. Not by much, but enough that I knew he had taken at least 5 steps toward me in the few seconds I looked down. My breath fogged the windshield as I started the engine with shaking hands. The moment my headlights turned on, I saw his face clearly for the first time. And I swear, his eyes didn't look normal. They looked wide, stretched almost too far open, like he wasn't blinking at all. And his mouth, it hung slightly open, like he was trying to speak, but couldn't remember how. I reversed too fast, almost hitting the dumpster, and sped out of the lot. I didn't look back until I was at the end of the street. The truck was still there. The man was gone. I got home, locked every door, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I told Marlene. Her face went pale. She told me I shouldn't have been there alone. Apparently, an older man had been hanging around the store for weeks, never coming inside, just sitting in his truck. No one ever got his name, and no one ever saw him again after that night. I don't talk about this night very often, mostly because anyone who hears it thinks I'm exaggerating or making it dramatic for a story. I wish that were the case. This happened last December, during a solo cross-country drive from Oregon to Minneapolis. I had just bought a used SUV and figured the long drive would be a good way to get used to it. I planned my route carefully: highways, cheap motels, nothing risky. That was the plan anyway. But winter had other ideas. By the time I reached Idaho, a massive storm rolled in unexpectedly. Snow was coming down sideways, visibility dropping to almost nothing. I was hours away from any town, and the highway signs warned the next lodging was 70 miles ahead. I didn't have much choice but to pull into one of those emergency rest stations they scatter along the more remote parts of the interstate. They're basically big concrete boxes with one bathroom and a door that barely shuts. Not meant for sleeping, but people use them that way when they're stranded. I parked right in front of it. My plan was simple: recline my seat, stay warm, wait until the storm slowed, then get back on the road. I've slept in my car plenty of times before. I wasn't nervous at all, at least not yet. Around 9 p.m., I turned off the engine to save gas, wrapped myself in a blanket, and watched the snow pile up outside. The wind kept shaking the SUV, but eventually I got used to it and slowly drifted off. The first thing that woke me was the sound of something metal tapping. Tap, tap, tap. At first I thought it was branches, or maybe ice pelting the car, but there weren't any trees nearby. I sat up and listened harder. Another tap, and it wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate, coming from the side of the building. I turned on my phone flashlight and tried peering out the window, but the snow and darkness made it almost impossible to see anything. I told myself it was just part of the structure moving with the wind. Old buildings do that. But then the tapping shifted. Now it was coming from the other side of the building, like someone was circling it. My stomach dropped. There was no reason for anyone to be out here. No other cars, no lights, no footprints. There couldn't be. They'd get buried instantly under the storm. I reminded myself it could be an animal, even though deep down I didn't believe it. I decided not to turn on the car again. I didn't want anyone, or anything, knowing someone was inside. I sat there upright, listening, barely breathing. A few minutes later, the tapping stopped. Completely. The kind of silence that doesn't feel relaxing, more like everything is holding its breath. I tried to calm down, telling myself I was overreacting. Winter can play tricks on your senses. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. That's when I heard it, a soft crunch of snow, right outside my passenger door. My eyes flew open. Someone was standing there. I didn't dare move. Through the fogged window, I could barely make out a silhouette. Tall, still facing the car. Not shifting, not pacing, not knocking. Just standing there like they were listening. I felt my hands shaking as I slowly reached for my keys. But I froze midway when the person bent down, lowering their face closer to the window, as if he was trying to look inside without touching the glass. I held my breath. After what felt like a full minute, he stood back up and walked toward the restroom building. I waited until he disappeared around the corner. I didn't care if the storm was ripping the highway apart. I had to leave. I turned the key in the ignition as quietly as I could, but the engine roared louder than I expected. My headlights blasted through the snow, and that's when I saw it. Not one person. 3. They were standing at different points around the building, all facing my SUV. One of them took a step toward me, lifting their arm like they were trying to signal me to stop. I slammed the car into drive. Snow flew everywhere as my tires struggled for traction, but the SUV lurched forward. The figure started running, not at full speed, but fast enough that it made my heart stop. One of them cut in front of the building, trying to block the exit onto the road. I didn't slow down. I swerved around him, almost losing control as the car fishtailed onto the icy highway. For the next 10 miles, I didn't see headlights behind me. Nothing followed me. When I finally reached a gas station with a working phone line, the local sheriff told me something that made the whole situation even worse. That rest station had been marked for closure months earlier because transients had been living inside the walls, literally inside the hollow structure, coming out at night to scare or rob stranded drivers. If you hadn't left when you did, the sheriff said, we'd probably still be looking for you. Every winter since then, I avoid long drives altogether. I don't trust those remote stops anymore. And I will never forget the way those 3 silhouettes just stood there, waiting as if they'd been expecting me.